Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're journeying back in time to ancient Rome, to a place that's become a symbol of both incredible architectural genius and brutal entertainment, the Colosseum. We've all seen the pictures, right? This magnificent, crumbling giant standing proud in the heart of Rome. But what really went on inside these walls? What secrets are hidden behind its grand arches? Well, grab your popcorn, or maybe some grapes and olives to be more authentic, because we're about to dive deep into the worlds of the Colosseum, beyond the postcard images. First off, let's talk about the name. We call it the Colosseum, but the Romans didn't. They called it the Flavian Amphitheater. Flavian, because it was built by the emperors of the Flavian dynasty, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. So, where did Colosseum come from? It's believed to be a nickname from the Middle Ages, referring to a colossal bronze statue of the Emperor Nero that once stood nearby. Imagine a statue so big it gave its name to the most massive amphitheater in the world. That's some serious star power. Construction started in the year 72 AD under Emperor Vespasian. Rome had just come out of a chaotic civil war, and Vespasian needed a win. He needed to give something back to the people, a grand gesture to show that the good times were back. And what better way to do that than with the biggest, baddest entertainment venue ever conceived? He chose the site of a former private lake on the grounds of Nero's extravagant Golden House. Talk about a power move, draining a tyrant's private lake to build a public arena. It was a clear message. The land was being returned to the people of Rome. The sheer scale of this project is mind-boggling. It's estimated that it took over 60,000 Jewish slaves brought to Rome after the First Roman-Jewish War to build it. They quarried and transported over 100,000 cubic meters of travertine stone and used an estimated 300 tons of iron clamps to hold the blocks together. This wasn't just a building, it was a statement of Roman power and engineering prowess. It stood nearly 50 meters tall, the height of a modern 12-story building, and could hold somewhere between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators. That's more than most modern sports stadiums, and the opening ceremony? Absolutely epic. When it was finally completed in 80 AD, under Vespasian's son, Titus, he threw a party that lasted for 100 days. 100 days of non-stop games. Historians tell us that during these inaugural games, over 9,000 wild animals were killed. It was a spectacle of unimaginable proportions, designed to awe the Roman populace and solidify the emperor's popularity. So, who got to see these incredible shows? Well, everyone, but not equally. Seating in the Colosseum was a perfect reflection of Roman social hierarchy. It was free to get in, but where you sat depended entirely on who you were. The emperor, senators, and vestal virgins got the best seats, right down near the action in ringside boxes. Above them sat the equestrian class, the wealthy businessmen. Then came the ordinary Roman citizens, the plebeians, with men and women separated. And way up at the very top, in the nosebleed section, were the poorest of the poor, slaves, and foreigners. It was a microcosm of Roman society, all packed into one giant stone bowl. The efficiency of the place was also incredible. With 80 entrances and exits, the entire stadium could fill up and empty out in a remarkably short time. They had a system called vomitoria, not what it sounds like, which were passageways that would spew out crowds into the stands. Think of the logistics of getting 50,000 people to their seats smoothly. The Romans had it figured out 2,000 years ago. They even had a retractable awning, the velarium, a massive canvas roof operated by hundreds of sailors to provide shade on hot days. An ancient retractable roof. Now let's get to the main event, the games themselves. A day at the Colosseum was an all-day affair. The morning would usually start with the venacion, or wild animal hunts. Exotic animals were brought from every corner of the Roman Empire. Lions from North Africa, tigers from Persia, bears from Germany, crocodiles from Egypt. These hunts were elaborate, often featuring painted scenery to look like forests or deserts. Sometimes it was trained hunters called venatores fighting the animals. Other times it was just a brutal display of animals fighting each other. Then, around midday, things took an even darker turn. This was the time for public executions. Condemned criminals, known as noxii, were thrown to the beasts or forced to fight each other to the death with no weapons or armor. It was the grim, state-sanctioned justice of the day, served up as lunchtime entertainment, a chilling reminder of how different their values were from ours. And finally, the afternoon was reserved for the headliners, the gladiators. This is the part we all think of when we imagine the Colosseum. But who were these gladiators? Most were slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals forced into a life of combat. A few, however, were free men who volunteered, seeking fame, glory, and fortune. It was a high-risk, high-reward career. They trained in special schools, or ludi, learning to fight with different types of weapons and armor. Each gladiator type had a specific set of gear, like the retiarius, with his net and trident, or the heavily armored secutor. The fights were not always to the death. Gladiators were valuable assets to their owners. They were expensive to train and maintain. A fight would often end when one gladiator was wounded or surrendered. At that point, the crowd and the emperor would decide his fate. The famous thumbs up or thumbs down gesture, though historians are still debating the exact gesture, would seal the gladiator's destiny. A gladiator who fought bravely might be spared to fight another day. A successful one could even win his freedom and become a celebrity, adored by the public. Their images were on lamps and pottery. They were the superstars of their day. But let's not romanticize it. The floor of the arena, covered in sand to soak up the blood, saw countless lives end in brutal fashion. It was a place of incredible violence. So what was happening beneath the arena floor? This is where the real magic and horror happened. The Colosseum had a complex two-level subterranean network of tunnels and chambers called the hypogeum. This was the backstage area. Here, gladiators and animals waited before being brought up to the arena. There were elevators and trapdoors, dozens of them, that allowed for dramatic entrances. Imagine a gladiator fighting, and suddenly a lion appears, as if from nowhere, lifted up from the darkness below. It would have been an incredible theatrical effect, designed to keep the crowd on the edge of their seats. The hypogeum was a dark, cramped and noisy place, filled with the stench of animals, the sweat of anxious fighters, and the sounds of machinery and roaring crowds from above. It was the engine room that powered the spectacle. They even had the ability to flood the arena for mock naval battles, or naumachii, though evidence suggests these were likely held in the earlier days before the hypogeum was fully built out. For over 400 years, the Colosseum was the heart of Roman entertainment. But as the Roman Empire began to decline and Christianity spread, tastes changed. The bloody games were seen as barbaric. The last recorded gladiatorial fights were in the early 5th century, and the animal hunts ended about a century later. After that, the Colosseum fell into disuse. Earthquakes caused significant damage, and for centuries it was treated as a giant quarry. Its marble seats and iron clamps were stripped away to build palaces, churches, and bridges all over Rome. It's a sad irony that the materials from this symbol of public life were used for private and religious buildings. But even in its ruined state, the Colosseum has never lost its power. It became a source of inspiration for Renaissance artists and a must-see stop for travelers on the Grand Tour. Today, it stands as a powerful, if somber, monument to both the brilliance and the brutality of ancient Rome. It reminds us of the incredible achievements of Roman engineering, but also of the cruelty they considered entertainment. It's a place of contradictions, of architectural genius and human suffering, of public celebration and state-sponsored violence. So next time you see a picture of the Colosseum, look beyond the grand facade. Think of the roar of 50,000 spectators, the smell of dust and blood, the anxious moments for a gladiator waiting in the dark tunnels below, and the incredible machinery that brought the whole deadly show to life. It's so much more than just a beautiful ruin. It's a window into the very soul of the Roman world. Thanks for joining me on this trip back in time. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more adventures into history, and let me know in the comments what ancient wonder you'd like to explore next. See you in the next video.